Thank you. First of all, it's great to be back with you again. John, thank you so much for those really kind words. And I want to thank everyone for all the work you do every single day on behalf of children and families across America. And I truly am grateful for this honor today. Some of you may know this, but it was actually children's issues that got me into politics in the first place. Actually an issue that affected my own two young children back in the early 80s when they were much younger, and I had them enrolled in this wonderful preschool program in my home state of Washington, and we were in an economic problem as we are today, and the state legislature decided to strip the funding from the preschool program that my kids were in. Now, I lived 100 miles from our capital. I had never been there before, never been involved in anything like it, but I thought, they just don't know what they're doing. I need to go tell them. So I put my two kids in the car and drove 100 miles down to Olympia and just started talking to legislators that I met in the hall and told them about this program and told them they just, they just didn't know. They just couldn't unfund this. And finally, I ran into one very tall, you've seen them, dark suits, red ties, legislators, important. And I said to him passionately about this preschool and how important it was, and he listened to me, and he looked down at me, and he said, "That's nice, but you can't make a difference. You're just a mom in tennis shoes." Well, I put my two kids back in the car, and I drove all the way home, telling them every step of the way I wasn't going to let them tell me that a mom in tennis shoes couldn't make a difference. Now, this was pre-tweets and even pre-computers in every home and pre-fax machines. I did what every mom would have done. I got on the phone and I started calling my friends. And I had them call other moms and other dads. In a few short months, we put 13,000 families together and we went back at the legislature. We wrote letters, we held rallies, we called and did phone trees, what you would all do on tweets and Facebook today, only we did it by telephone and passion and managed to sit in front of any committee that would even say the word children, and over 3 months' time embarrassed them into putting the funding back in place and saved that preschool program that is still in effect today. I went on to teach in that same preschool, and throughout my political career, from the school board to the state senate to here to the United States Senate, I have never forgotten the impact that just regular people joining together to fight for their children and their communities can have on legislative priorities. So I understand how important the work that First Focus and all of you here today are doing, especially now, especially today. As all of you know, when our nation's economy struggles, it's too often our children who bear the heaviest burden. They're never the ones who cause this crisis, but time and time again, they are the ones who feel the pain. That's why I was so proud to work with so many of you here in this room to put in place policies to protect our children and families since this crisis began, and to do what we could to cushion them from some of the hardships that it has caused. Working together, we passed health care reform legislation that will allow 7 million uninsured children across the country to gain access to coverage through the Medicaid expansion and the new health care insurance exchanges. We expanded those programs that low-income families count on, and we made sure that private insurance companies could no longer deny care to children because of a pre-existing condition or place annual or lifetime limits on a young child for coverage that they're going to need. We also put in place significant funding for high-quality early childhood home visitation services because we know those programs work, and they'll help make sure that children have the opportunity to grow up healthy and safe and ready for school. Let's never forget the health care reform law that we passed was a victory for children. We cannot let it be undone. But I'm also very proud of the work we did to make sure children were a priority in the Recovery Act that passed in 2009. I know you're going to hear a little bit about this later when the Children's Budget 2011 report's released, but the $49.5 billion of Recovery Act funding that went towards children's programs increased total federal spending in these areas by almost 20%. Without the Recovery Act, children's funding would have been lower in the middle of the crisis when it was needed most than it was back in 2007. So I'm proud of some of the victories we won over the last few years. But the work is far from over, and I'm here to tell you today the challenges ahead are significant. As many of you know, Democrats and Republicans are currently working together to reauthorize the No Child Left Behind Act. And frankly, I hope we never call it that again. Now, there are a number of areas that we're working to improve on, and we need to make sure that our states and schools have the resources that were actually promised them when that act first passed, so that it really works for our young students. But today, I'm especially focused on making sure the legislation includes strong improvements in two specific areas that I want you to know about. One is literacy education, and the other is early childhood education. You know we know that if children can't read or write, they can't learn. And if we don't get students on the right track early, it's much harder and much more expensive to do it later. That's why I was very proud to introduce the LEARN Act, which will provide schools with the resources they need to make sure that children from birth to grade 12 have the reading and writing skills they need so they can succeed in school and beyond, as well as the Ready to Learn Act, which will help prepare children for kindergarten by providing funding for states to establish and administer high-quality preschool programs in their local communities. And I'm going to fight very hard to make sure that these bills are included in the reauthorization. And I'm here today to ask for all of you to help me support those and make sure we get the word out about how important they are to include